I remember the day I first met Ryan's family like it was yesterday. Everything seemed perfect at first. I had been dating Ryan for 3 years, and we had just gotten married. I was young, full of hope, and completely in love. I thought joining his family would be like stepping into a warm, welcoming home. I couldn't have been more wrong. Ryan's parents lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs, all neatly manicured lawns and polished floors. His mother, Margaret, smiled at me when I arrived, but there was something in her eyes that made me uneasy, like she was measuring me, testing me. I brushed it off. Maybe it was just first day nerves. At first, everything was fine. I laughed at Ryan's dad's jokes, complimented the decorations, tried to bond with his sister Laura. I wanted so badly to be accepted, to feel like part of the family. But I quickly realized that every compliment I gave, every attempt I made, seemed to be twisted in their minds. Margaret would give me a faint smile, but then whisper something to Laura, and I'd catch a sly glance shared between them. It started small, innocent comments here and there. "Emily, don't you think you're a bit too controlling?" Margaret asked once when I suggested a change in the seating arrangement for family dinner. I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off as a joke, but Ryan's hesitation, the way he didn't immediately defend me, made a small seed of doubt plant itself in my heart. I had always believed that Ryan loved me, that he would always see me clearly. But over the next few months, little things started happening. He began questioning my choices, what I cooked for dinner, how I spent my weekends, even the way I decorated our home. And it always seemed to come after a conversation with his mother. I tried talking to him about it, but he'd just sigh and say, "Maybe she's right, Emily. Maybe I should listen." It hurt, more than I could ever put into words. I felt like I was slowly losing the man I married, and I couldn't understand why. My heart ached every time I caught a glance of his confusion, every time I felt the distance growing between us. I tried to hold on, tried to remind myself that our love was strong, that we could survive this. But then came the first real argument. I don't even remember what it was about anymore. Something trivial, something stupid. But Margaret's words had already set the stage. Ryan accused me of being selfish, controlling, not thinking about anyone but myself. I was stunned. My mind raced. How could he believe that? How could he think I didn't love him? I left that night feeling hollow, like someone had carved out a part of me I would never get back. I cried myself to sleep wondering if I had married the right man, or if I had married the version of him that existed before his family started shaping his thoughts, twisting his perception of me. I didn't realize it at the time, but that night was the first step into a long, quiet nightmare, one that would slowly chip away at my marriage, at my confidence, and at the life I had imagined with Ryan. I thought it was just a rough patch, something temporary. I had no idea that the storm had only just begun. After that first argument, I tried harder than ever to make things right. I thought if I was more accommodating, more understanding, maybe Ryan would come back to me fully and the tension would disappear. I cooked his favorite meals, smiled more, laughed at his jokes even when I didn't feel like it. But nothing seemed to work. It wasn't just Ryan anymore, it was his family. Margaret started making comments that felt harmless on the surface, but they were loaded. "Oh, Emily, you really shouldn't worry about Ryan too much. Let him breathe." Or, "Sometimes I think Emily forgets this is a family and not just a two-person show." Every time she said something like that, Ryan nodded along, never defending me. And the worst part, I began to question myself. Maybe I was too controlling. Maybe I really was selfish. Laura, his sister, joined in subtly. She would joke about how I never understood the family traditions or how I didn't know how to plan events the right way. At first, I laughed along nervously, hoping it was just teasing. But the laughter never felt warm. It was sharp, cold, like they were testing me, pushing me, and watching to see if I would crack. I started noticing patterns. Invitations to family dinners seemed to slip past me, or I'd be told last minute. Ryan would shrug and say, "They just assumed you couldn't make it." But I knew better. I could feel it, the slow, quiet exclusion. It hurt more than I could admit, and it made me feel small, invisible, like I didn't belong anywhere. One evening, Ryan and I had what I thought was a private moment to talk. I tried to explain how I felt, how lonely and misunderstood I was, but the moment I spoke, he sighed and said something that cut me deeper than any argument before. Maybe your family would understand you better, Emily. Maybe I'm the one who's confused. I froze. I had married him because I thought he was my partner, my safe place. But in that moment, I realized how much control his family had over him and over us. That night, I cried until my eyes were swollen. I felt like I was losing not just my husband, but myself. Every attempt to connect, to fight for our love, seemed to vanish the moment I tried. And yet I didn't give up. I told myself I had to survive, that I had to find a way through this because Ryan was worth it. I didn't yet know that the storm wasn't just about small arguments or cold shoulders. The lies were deeper than I could imagine, woven into every conversation, every opinion, and slowly, methodically, they were changing the man I loved. The Emily that had walked into this marriage full of hope was slowly being replaced by someone uncertain, doubting her own worth. And it terrified me. And then came the day that made it undeniable. I overheard a phone call, just a snippet, a few words, but it was enough. Margaret's voice, cold and deliberate, saying, "He'll believe whatever I tell him. She'll never see it coming." I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. I had known they were influencing him, but I had never heard it so openly, so intentionally. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a rough patch. This was a war, and I had no idea how far they were willing to go to win. After that overheard conversation, I couldn't sleep for days. Every little thing started feeling like a trap. I noticed how Ryan would glance at his phone after a message from his mother, how he'd pause before replying to me, as if he were weighing what she had told him against what I said. The man I had married, the one I had trusted with my entire heart, seemed to be slipping away, and I couldn't reach him. Family events became unbearable. I would arrive at dinners only to find subtle exclusions. Seating arrangements where I was at the edge of the room, conversations that paused when I entered, whispers that stopped abruptly when I looked. Laura would lean toward her mother and laugh, glancing at me in a way that made my stomach twist. I felt like I was being tested every single time, and no matter what I did, it was never enough. One evening, I tried to suggest a fun family activity, something simple and harmless. Ryan hesitated, and Margaret said, "Maybe we should do what's always worked best. Don't you agree, Ryan?" And he nodded. Just like that, my idea was dismissed. I felt invisible, undermined in my own home. The little cracks of confidence I had left in myself were growing into gaping holes. It was during these months that Ryan's attitude toward me began to change in ways I hadn't anticipated. He started questioning everything I did, every choice I made. He would ask things like, "Are you sure that's the right way?" Or, "Don't you think you're being a little too controlling?" He didn't yell or argue, he just asked, softly, like he genuinely believed it. And every time, a piece of me crumbled. I tried talking to him, explaining how manipulative his family was being, but he would wave it off. "You're imagining things, Emily. They don't mean it that way." His words sounded kind, but they carried a weight of distance I couldn't ignore. I felt trapped between my love for him and the truth I was slowly beginning to see, but he couldn't hear me. The breaking point came on a quiet Tuesday evening, of all days. Ryan and I had barely spoken since that last family gathering, the tension between us thicker than ever. I had tried to be patient, tried to give him space, thinking maybe he just needed time to see reason. But when he walked in that night, his expression was tense, closed off, like a man preparing for battle. He didn't greet me warmly, didn't ask how my day had been. Instead, he said, almost coldly, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I knew what this meant. I braced myself. "You're being selfish, Emily.
You don't think about anyone but yourself. You try to control everything, our lives, our family, even my decisions. I blinked, stunned. Every word felt like a knife cutting through the heart I had given him willingly. Ryan, what are you talking about? I whispered. You know that's not true. I've been trying to make this marriage work, to keep us close. I've heard enough, he interrupted, his voice rising slightly. Your ideas, your plans, your constant nagging, it's exhausting. Even my family thinks you're controlling. Maybe I've been blind, but I can't ignore it anymore. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My world was spinning and I couldn't catch my breath. I tried to reach for him, to touch his arm, but he stepped back, avoiding me like I was a stranger. I screamed, not out loud, but inside my own mind. All those months of doubt, of whispers, of subtle manipulation suddenly crashed down on me. Every late-night conversation, every judgmental glance, every suggestion that I was too much, it all made sense now. They had done this. Margaret, Laura. They had convinced him I was the villain, and it was working. I wanted to shout, to demand he remember the woman he had fallen in love with, but my voice caught in my throat. I was terrified. Terrified that I was losing him, terrified that he might never see the truth. That night, I cried alone in our bedroom, listening to him sleep on the other side of the bed. I felt invisible, unheard, and completely powerless. The love I thought was unshakable seemed like sand slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know how to hold on to it. But beneath the fear and despair, a spark ignited. Somewhere deep inside, I found a determination I didn't know I had. I refused to let them destroy my marriage without a fight. I refused to let Ryan believe lies about me without proof. I didn't yet know how I would do it, but I knew one thing. I had to uncover the truth. I had to expose the manipulation, no matter what it took. And in that moment, as I wiped my tears and stared at my reflection in the darkened bedroom mirror, I whispered to myself, I will make them see. I will make him see. I will take back what's mine, even if it destroys everything first. The first step in my plan to reclaim my marriage was to uncover the truth. I started paying attention, really paying attention to everything around me. At first, it was small things, the way Ryan's phone would light up when his mother texted, the subtle tone in his voice when he repeated something she had said. Then I began noticing patterns, conversations that didn't quite make sense, meetings and gatherings that excluded me, and the way he seemed to doubt me for no reason. One evening, I stayed up later than usual, pretending to scroll through my own messages while keeping an ear on Ryan's calls. I didn't have to wait long. Margaret's voice came through the speaker, calm, deliberate, and cruelly precise. You just have to make sure she thinks she's overreacting, she said. She won't see it coming. He'll believe me over her, every time. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe at first. Every doubt, every sleepless night, every tear I had shed suddenly had a name, a face, a voice. Margaret had been orchestrating everything, manipulating Ryan, twisting every situation to make me look bad. And he had believed her. I didn't stop there. I started going through old messages, emails, even social media comments, carefully piecing together a trail of lies. I found texts from Laura mocking me behind my back, laughing about how easily I could be controlled. There were emails from Margaret hinting at how difficult I was and how Ryan should be careful. Every message made my blood boil, but it also strengthened my resolve. I remember the moment I realized just how deep it went. I had found a conversation where Margaret had convinced Ryan to doubt a major decision I had made about our finances. He had questioned me for weeks, and I had felt guilty for wanting what was best for both of us, not realizing it was all a setup. I felt betrayed, heartbroken, and furious all at once. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the glowing screen in front of me, trying to make sense of it all. I whispered to myself, so that's what's been happening. They've been lying to me, manipulating him, destroying us from the inside. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't cry this time. Not when I had finally found the evidence I needed. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of power return to me. I wasn't helpless anymore. I had proof. And with proof comes control. I knew what I had to do next. I had to confront him carefully, show him everything, and force him to see the truth for himself. But I also knew it wouldn't be easy. This wasn't just about exposing lies, it was about breaking the hold they had over him, about making him trust me again after years of subtle manipulation. And I realized, with a cold, determined clarity, that once I started, there would be no turning back. I didn't yet know how Ryan would react. I didn't know if he would forgive them or even forgive me for letting it happen. But I knew one thing for certain. The moment of reckoning was coming. And when it did, everything would change. Once I had the proof in front of me, I realized that I couldn't just storm in and start accusing everyone. That would backfire. I needed a strategy, a way to show Ryan the truth without pushing him away. I had to make him see for himself, to confront the reality his family had hidden from him all these years. I started small, paying attention to how they spoke to him, what subtle comments they made when I was in the room versus when I wasn't. I kept copies of messages, screenshots, and notes in a hidden folder on my phone. Every time Margaret said something to manipulate him, I saved it. Every snide remark from Laura, every carefully placed whisper, nothing went unnoticed. I also started recording our private conversations, the ones where Ryan questioned me, doubted my intentions. I let him speak freely, knowing that later I could show him how much of his doubt had been influenced by them. It felt cold, even a little cruel, but I knew it was the only way to fight back. At the same time, I started testing his reactions in small ways. I brought up topics I knew Margaret had twisted, calmly presenting the truth and watching him process it. Sometimes he hesitated, sometimes he shrugged, but I could see the wheels turning in his mind. Slowly, I was planting seeds of doubt, not against him, but against the lies he had been fed. I also confronted myself. I had to be strong, calm, and unwavering. If I let my emotions take over completely, if I cried or yelled, it would only reinforce the narrative they had created, that I was unstable, controlling, and unreasonable. I had to become someone they couldn't dismiss, someone whose voice demanded attention. It wasn't easy. Every family gathering felt like walking into a minefield. Margaret would make veiled comments, Laura would roll her eyes or laugh at my jokes sarcastically, and Ryan would sometimes remain silent, caught in the middle. But I stayed patient, carefully collecting evidence, slowly preparing the moment when the truth would finally be undeniable. I remember one particular night I had been compiling messages for weeks. When I sat down with all of them laid out in front of me, screenshots, texts, emails, even casual notes I had taken of overheard conversations, I could finally see the full extent of their manipulation, and it made my blood boil. They hadn't just turned Ryan against me. They had tried to dismantle everything I had built with him, piece by piece. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't just expose their lies. I would reveal everything, publicly if I had to make sure Ryan saw the truth. It was no longer just about saving my marriage. It was about reclaiming my life. But I also knew the hardest part was yet to come. Confronting Ryan with this evidence would change everything. He might be angry, he might feel betrayed that I had kept it for so long. He might even reject it. And yet, I had no choice. I had to act before the web of lies grew any tighter. I took a deep breath, telling myself over and over, this is the moment. There's no turning back. I will make them see, and I will save us. The day I finally confronted Ryan is burned into my memory. I remember the way my hand shook as I held my phone, the folder of messages and notes I had compiled like armor in my hands. I had rehearsed what I would say over and over, trying to anticipate every possible reaction, but nothing could have prepared me for the mixture of shock, guilt, and confusion that crossed his face the moment I started. Ryan, I began, my voice trembling but steady. There's something I need to show you. You've been lied to, manipulated, and it's time you see the truth. At first, he looked at me like I was speaking another language. What are you talking about, Emily? He asked cautiously, almost afraid. I opened my phone and showed him the first set of messages from his mother, the texts that twisted every decision I had made, the notes from Laura laughing about how easy it was to control him. His face went pale as he scrolled through the evidence, his eyes widening with each screenshot, each line of manipulation. They They told me this? He whispered, his voice cracking. All this time, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you were being unreasonable. I reached for his hand. Ryan, none of it was true. They wanted you to believe I was the problem so they could control everything. They didn't want us to be happy. They've been manipulating you for years. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands, and I could see the weight of realization crushing him. I can't believe I didn't see it. I didn't even realize I was listening to them over you, he said quietly. Tears welled in my eyes, but I held them back. I had worked so hard to get to this point. I couldn't let emotion cloud the moment. I said gently, it's not your fault. They made it their mission to make you doubt me. But now you know, and now we can fix it. He looked up at me, and I saw the man I had married, the real Ryan, peeking through the confusion and guilt. I've been so blind, he admitted. I can't believe I almost lost you over their lies. We spent hours going through every conversation, every moment of doubt, every subtle manipulation. I explained how they twisted events, how even small jokes and comments were calculated to make me look controlling or selfish. He listened, sometimes in disbelief, sometimes in silent shame, and slowly I could see the scales falling from his eyes. But I also knew this confrontation was just the beginning. Exposing the lies to Ryan was one thing. Getting him to confront his family, to understand the depth of their manipulation, was another. Margaret and Laura wouldn't give up so easily. They would fight, deny, and twist the truth again. Still, in that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. The walls that had been built between us were finally cracking, and I could see a path forward, a path where Ryan and I could rebuild what had been nearly destroyed by deception and control. And as we held each other that night, exhausted but determined, I realized one undeniable truth. I was no longer going to be a victim. I had the proof, I had his understanding, and I was ready to face whatever came next, no matter how hard they tried to manipulate us again.
The fallout with his family began sooner than I expected. The day after I confronted Ryan, Margaret called, her voice sweet and light, hiding the storm underneath. "Emily, we need to talk," she said. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I had been planning this for months, and I was ready. When she arrived at our house, I stayed calm. Ryan stood beside me, his presence a silent reassurance. Margaret tried her usual charm, soft smiles and gentle tones, but it didn't work. Not this time. I presented the messages, the notes, the proof of every lie, every manipulation, every calculated move to turn him against me. Margaret's smile faltered as she saw the evidence laid bare. She tried to deny, to twist, but Ryan didn't waver this time. He listened, eyes wide, as I explained how they had isolated me, undermined my decisions, and planted seeds of doubt in him for years. Laura, who had been lurking behind her mother, tried to interject with laughter and excuses,
But Ryan silenced her with a look I had never seen before. Protective, firm, unwavering. "This ends now," Ryan said, his voice steady, more confident than I had ever heard him. "Protective, firm, unwavering. I will not let you manipulate me or us any longer. I will not let you control my life or my marriage. I choose Emily, and I won't be swayed again." I felt a weight lift from my chest. For years, I had felt powerless, trapped in their web of lies. But now, standing there with Ryan by my side, I realized that we were finally reclaiming control. Margaret and Laura were taken aback, not used to being confronted with their own deceit. For once, they couldn't twist the narrative to make me look like the villain. It wasn't easy. There were tears, raised voices, and stubborn denials. But for the first time, the power shifted. I wasn't cowering. I wasn't apologizing for things I hadn't done. I was standing strong with Ryan fully aware of the truth, and together we faced them. In the days that followed, boundaries were set. Family gatherings became ours to navigate, not theirs to control. Ryan confronted every subtle manipulation, every whispered comment, and made it clear that their influence over us was over. Margaret and Laura didn't disappear entirely, but the fear and tension they once wielded vanished. I also realized something important about myself in those moments. I had found a strength I didn't know existed, the strength to fight, to protect my marriage, and to demand respect. It wasn't just about Ryan. It was about reclaiming my identity, my confidence, and my voice. And yet, even with victory in sight, I knew the battle had left scars. The trust between Ryan and I had been tested, stretched to the breaking point, and our hearts had been bruised by years of manipulation. But we had survived, together, and that made the victory all the more powerful. I looked at him one evening, quietly, and whispered, "We did it. We finally did it." And he held me close, words unnecessary, because in that moment, we both knew we had faced the storm and come out stronger, together. After the confrontation, life began to change in ways I hadn't dared to hope for. Ryan and I spent long nights talking, sometimes quietly, sometimes with laughter, often with tears. We revisited every argument, every misunderstanding, every moment of doubt. And slowly, the walls that had been built between us started to crumble. We set boundaries with his family. It wasn't easy. There were tense conversations, awkward silences, and a few tears. But Ryan stood firm. He made it clear that manipulation and lies would no longer have a place in our lives. Margaret and Laura were forced to adjust, and for the first time, I saw them respect us. Not fully, perhaps, but enough to know their power had been broken. Ryan apologized, over and over, not just for believing his family's lies, but for the way he had doubted me. During this time, I discovered something about myself, too. I had been so focused on pleasing others, on keeping the peace, that I had forgotten my own worth. Now I found strength in my own voice, my own decisions, and my own boundaries. I realized that love isn't just about being together. It's about protecting each other from those who would try to tear you apart. We started doing things differently. We planned trips without asking permission, made decisions about our home together, and laughed freely again without fear of judgment. Even the smallest moments felt monumental. The first meal we cooked together without interference. The first evening spent with friends without a hidden agenda. Each step was a reminder that we had survived and that we were finally free. And yet, the scars remained. I couldn't forget the months of doubt, the nights of crying alone, the feeling of losing the man I loved to someone else's lies. But instead of weakening me, those scars became a part of my strength, a reminder of how far we had come. I realized something profound. Surviving manipulation, reclaiming love, and standing up for yourself doesn't make you bitter, it makes you stronger. And in Ryan's arms, I felt that strength every single day, knowing that no one could take it away from us again. For the first time in years, I felt truly safe. Not because the storm had ended entirely, but because we had learned to face it together. And together, we were unstoppable. Looking back now, I realize how much I've grown from everything that happened. The months of doubt, manipulation, and heartbreak feel like a lifetime ago, yet they shaped me in ways I never could have imagined. I learned that love alone isn't always enough. Sometimes you need courage, strategy, and the strength to fight for the truth. I think about how easy it was to be deceived, to let someone else's opinions shape our reality. I used to believe that Ryan and I were untouchable, that our love was proof against interference. But I learned the hard way that even the strongest relationships can be tested by lies, manipulation, and subtle control. And surviving that taught me something invaluable. Never let anyone, no matter how close, convince you that you are less than you are. Ryan and I are stronger now. Our marriage isn't perfect, nothing in life ever is, but it's honest, open, and real. We laugh, we argue, we dream together, and we do it on our own terms. We've built a foundation that no one can undermine because it's built on truth, trust, and a shared understanding of the storms we have faced. Margaret and Laura remain in our lives, but the power they once held is gone. I've learned to navigate interactions with them without fear, without letting old wounds control me. And in that way, I've reclaimed not just my marriage, but my sense of self. The hardest part of this journey was realizing that the people who were supposed to love us unconditionally could be the ones causing the most damage. But even in that, there is a lesson. Awareness is power. Once I saw the manipulation for what it was, I could act. Once I knew the truth, I could fight. And once I stood firm, nothing could take it away. I often think about the little moments that started it all. The whispered comments, the subtle exclusions, the small lies, and I shiver at how close we came to losing everything. But I also smile, because I survived. We survived. And sometimes that's all that matters. Life is far from perfect. We carry the scars, the memories, the lessons, but those scars are mine, earned through resilience and love. And every day, as I look at Ryan and see the man who finally chose the truth over manipulation, I know we've created something unbreakable. I would never wish the pain we endured on anyone. But I also know that without it, I wouldn't be the woman I am today. Stronger, wiser, unafraid, and fiercely protective of the life and love I fought so hard to reclaim. Because in the end, no one can turn your love against you unless you let them. And I never will again.